Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian among 4 US citizens freed in a prisoner swap deal at the weekend. He arrived at a military base in Germany on Sunday, according to American officials. Now, the group's release was made public as international sanctions on Iran were lifted under a historic deal with major world powers. We can speak now to one of the people who's been in touch with Jason Rezaian, Douglas Jehl, who's the Washington Post's foreign editor. Douglas, I'm sure you're feeling very relieved. How is Jason doing?
He's doing remarkably well. We saw him for about 2 hours this afternoon and then again for a couple more hours over a joyous dinner with his family. He looks strong. He sounds good. He says he knows recovery will take a while, but he's remarkably resilient.
And we know that he has had some health issues during that year and a half that he was detained in Iran. Do you know any more detail about those?
I think the worst of the physical health problems have been addressed over this year and a half. There were 3 occasions in which they were serious enough that he had to be taken to a hospital outside of Evin prison, although one still run by Iran's Revolutionary Guards. But those acute problems seem under control. The longer-term issue of processing this ordeal, addressing its undeniable psychological impact will take longer to play out, but physically he's doing quite well.
Indeed, Evin prison, where you just mentioned Jason was held, does have a very notorious reputation. Do you know what kind of conditions Jason was held in?
He was essentially isolated for most of his time behind bars. He was in solitary confinement for 49 days, but even after that, he was really limited in contact to one cellmate with whom he didn't share language. Jason spent a lot of time walking round and round an 8-by-8-foot concrete courtyard outside that provided him some exercise, sometimes for up to 5 hours at a time. But when he left his cell, he would have to be blindfolded. So it really was a difficult challenge for a person like Jason who really craves human contact.
And we know that there's been intense pressure to have Jason freed. We've followed it closely here on France 24. Was he kept informed about those efforts?
I think he had limited knowledge about what was happening, but certainly a very, very small slice of the picture. Remember, he was isolated. He would see coverage on Iran state television. He was permitted occasional visits by his mother and his wife, but always under supervision, always being listened into by Iranians. And when he met with his lawyer, it would only be in the presence of a judge and prosecutor. So what he knew was that efforts were underway, but he had no idea really just how extensive they were, how much attention his story had gotten, and just what a moment his release and that of Amir Hekmati and Saeed Abedini would be when it finally came this weekend.
Now, Jason, of course, hasn't been cleared by Iran of these allegations that he was spying. Does your newspaper feel that this issue still needs to be addressed?
I think we're working through that. I think it's not entirely clear to us how the case has been resolved, the final disposition. And absolutely, Jason was operating entirely legally, fully accredited. He did nothing wrong. The injustice, the reprehensible treatment that's been inflicted on him, the way it's changed his life, cannot be wiped away with one agreement, and he absolutely wants to see his name fully cleared.
Indeed, clearly a deeply traumatizing experience for Jason himself. I imagine for yourself and other colleagues at the Washington Post as well. Is the newspaper hoping to have a Tehran correspondent in the future?
I think we'll have to address that as we begin to discuss the lessons learned from Jason's treatment. Certainly, his long incarceration and the way Iran has acted has served notice of just more dangers to foreign correspondents, not just from wars and terrorists from governments who choose not to abide by the laws. So we haven't made any decision. We'll have to discuss that and make a considered decision in the time ahead.
I'm sure. And right now, I imagine there's a lot of people in the United States who are hoping to pop some champagne corks and give Jason a big hug. Do you know how long it's going to be before he can actually return to the United States?
We don't know. I was just looking at my watch and realizing that he's barely been on the ground for 25 or 26 hours now. It's been a heady arrival, but I know he wants to take time to ensure that his health and other needs are addressed, and then to take things one step at a time. So he's not rushing, and neither are we. He has a story to tell and many parties to attend, and there'll be time for that ahead.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time to speak to us. Douglas Jehl, of Washington Post foreign editor, speaking to us there live.